Well, economists are now saying that the U.S. will enter a recession within the next year.
And with that, employers are expected to cut jobs. Forecasters expect the unemployment rate will tick up 3.7% by December. Right now, it stands at 3.5%. The good news, though, most economists seem to believe that a recession will be short-lived, lasting about 8 months. And when all is said and done, they expect the economy to grow nearly 0.5% next year. For more, and I see her nodding, let's bring in Wall Street Journal reporter Harriet Torry. Harriet, how can the economy still grow next year if forecasters are predicting a recession that lasts, well, just under a year?
Yeah, that is a very good question. So some people are saying that this recession is likely to look like a pasta bowl in the sense that it will be relatively long, but also shallow. If you think of, a bowl of pasta that you would eat out of. We've talked about the K-shaped recession and, the K-shaped recovery, the W-shaped recession, double dip. This is the pasta bowl analogy. So although they are expecting a recession in 2023, economists are expecting that it will only last for a relatively short period of time. They're looking at 2 negative quarters of growth in the first and the second quarters of next year. But then, for the year as a whole, the important thing to note is that they are expecting growth next year. They're expecting growth of 0.4%, which is actually better than what they're expecting for this year. So the picture is not entirely bleak, although, a recession is, of course, bad for many people in the economy, particularly because, as you mentioned, usually in a recession, we see the unemployment rate go up, and that does cause a lot of pain for households.
Yeah, we know that the Fed has been purposefully trying to slow down the U.S. economy to deal with inflation. But obviously, we all become concerned when we start to talk about a recession and job losses. How bad do you think that the job losses are expected to be? And in particular, which sectors are expected to be hit hardest?
Well, what we saw in our survey, so once a quarter, we survey about 60 economists from leading academic and business institutions. And what they're saying is that they expect job losses of about between 30 and 40,000 per month in the second and the third quarters of next year. So they expect the job losses to start shortly after, the economy contracts. And that's pretty typical because, we see a slowdown in the economy, companies start making less money, fewer profits, and they respond by cutting jobs. So they are expecting the unemployment rate to tick a bit higher next year. Even starting this year, they expect it to go up a little bit from the current 3.5 to 3.7, and then they see it going up to about 4.2, 4.3 next year. But it's worth mentioning that in the historical context, this is still an extremely low unemployment rate.
Right.
This is, and although it implies a rise and it implies that people will lose their jobs, it doesn't suggest that there will be mass layoffs. I mean, when we saw the first COVID-19 shutdowns, we saw a huge jump in the unemployment rate, and they're not expecting anything like this to come about.
Now, how do all these forecasts play into the Fed's battle against inflation? We've seen so many interest rate hikes that I probably lost count by now. Are they doing too much? Are they doing too little? What do you expect given these forecasts?
So this is the big point that the latest survey that we put out has made. I mean, we had a survey in July where economists largely thought that the economy would grow in the first and the second quarters of next year, and their recession probability odds were significantly lower than they are now. Now, that has flipped since July, between July and October. And the reason that economists gave for that is because they are worried that the Fed is not going to be able to achieve what is known as a soft landing. Now, that's a situation in which the Fed manages to bring down inflation and achieve, one of its primary mandates, but at the same time not cause a recession. And economists were sort of, there's always been some debate over whether this will be possible, but now economists are becoming increasingly skeptical that this is going to happen. And they're saying that the problem is that when inflation started to pick up in 2021, the Fed really stuck to the message that inflation was going to be transitory and it was going to come down. Pretty soon, it would just be a few months of high inflation and things would get back to normal somewhat. And what we've seen over the course of 2022 is that has not been the case. We've just been hitting fresh 4-decade highs in the inflation rate over and over and again. And that just happened last week. We saw a fresh core inflation 4-decade high. So it doesn't look like inflation is coming down at the speed at which they would like and which economists would like to see as well. And as a result, they're just worried that the Fed is going to overshoot with the rate increases and the monetary policy tightening and tip the economy into a recession. And they're just becoming more and more doubtful that the Fed will be able to bring down inflation without causing the unemployment rate to rise and the economy to contract.
Well, for all the families that are so concerned about this, I'm still hoping for that soft landing. Harriet Torry, thank you.
Thank you.